Hey, good afternoon, y'all. Meteorologist John Hominick here with Empire Weather. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great Tuesday so far. We are so excited to debut our summer forecast here for 2023. Going to keep it pretty short. I know not everyone has time to sit here and watch this video for 10 minutes or longer. So there will be a PDF attached to this, and this video will run you through all of the thoughts in that PDF. If you guys have additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And also stay tuned. We're going to be doing a Twitter space where we'll do interactive Q&A as well. So let's start by going over what the forecasting process typically involves for seasonal forecasts. We want to start by analyzing the current conditions, right? So we want to look at the last several months, not just the last several weeks. We go all the way back to what did this winter look like? You know, what has the spring looked like so far? Even behind that, how many years were we in a La Nina? Things like that. Then we want to look at the global conditions. So what is going on around the globe right now with the ENSO state, with the stratosphere, with the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific and Atlantic? We need to take a top-down look at the atmosphere and understand where we stand right now. That helps us compile a list of analogs, which, this year, to be quite honest, are few and far between. There's not many years that had a similar SST configuration as this one, and also featured a third-year La Nina coming into what is rapidly developing El Nino. So we will compile a list of analogs, but this year our sample size is a little smaller than usual. And then finally, we weight the forecast based on what we have seen, what we are seeing now, our analog years, the forecast models, or our understanding of the pattern, and we put together a forecast package. So here are the highlights that we have put together so far. The first highlight is obviously we are transitioning from La Nina into El Nino. The La Nina itself weakened significantly over the last several months and now has transitioned to neutral, but we are already seeing El Nino type conditions impacting the pattern. The second thing is we have a favorable pattern early on. I think that's not news to anybody. With some local exceptions, obviously, we do see favorable pattern with warmth and moisture chances here over the next several days and weeks. So that's going to be a feature moving into summer. And then the third thing is we're going to see some warmth build in mid to late summer and possibly some dryness as well. And that's going to be a focus point for us that we need to keep a really close eye on moving forward. So where's corn precipitation right now? This is the last 180 days ending on the 14th of May. You can very clearly see we have a surplus of precipitation in U.S. corn regions of about 2 inches, a little bit under that. There's been pretty steady precipitation here over the last several days and weeks. And that's put us in a pretty good position, really starting in late February and early March and then continuing into early May. Quite a bit of precipitation on average. Obviously, we mentioned before, there are some local regions that have not been as lucky, and we'll dive into those as well. But so far, average, the U.S. corn regions and soybean regions are doing pretty well. You can't say the same for wheat, though. The wheat areas are doing very poorly. We have seen a recovery recently with some precipitation down in the southern plains wheat areas, but still generally a pretty big deficit of around 3 inches as of the 14th of May. So that gives us a little bit of a look into the areas that have had some problems. And here's our soil moisture analysis to go along with it. So a lot of the regions that were really struggling last year at this time are doing a lot better now. For instance, eastern Colorado into parts of the central plains, the Dakotas, Minnesota, your soil moisture is above normal in these greens and blues. But notice how in parts of the central plains here, really from Texas Panhandle into Oklahoma, into Kansas, and then parts of eastern Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri, these areas are still a little bit behind. They haven't had as much rain as the northern plains or even as parts of eastern Colorado recently. So their 0 to 100 centimeter soil moisture, their subsurface soil root zone is a little bit below normal. Some of these areas are well below normal, actually. And this is going to need to be monitored, this area in particular, as we move into the summer season, because there's going to be some rainfall chances here coming up, but this area is prone to some dryness. And while we've seen some drought improvements in Texas and western Kansas and eastern Colorado especially, and even in parts of western Nebraska, this eastern Nebraska and Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas region is quite dry. We need to keep a very close eye on this. Elsewhere, though, we're in a pretty good place. We'll see some rain in the Ohio Valley that'll likely help with this moisture deficit a little bit more. And the northern plains are doing very well. They're actually a little bit wet. We've seen quite a recovery in parts of Texas as well, and are expecting additional rains here in parts of Texas and Oklahoma. So again, this is going to be the focus area right here moving forward, and we'll get back to that shortly. Here's the latest drought monitor. Again, we are expecting some improvements to this in Texas, in Kansas, probably some continuation of drought here in that region of eastern Nebraska and northeast Kansas, southwest Iowa that we talked about. This region right here is going to be the focus. But we will slowly start to see some improvements on this drought monitor as we move through the next couple of weeks. But again, you can very clearly see the area that's going to be the focus point here moving into the summer. Here's the last 90 days of rainfall. And again, the northern plains are very, very wet. Obviously, some of this includes snow as well. We call it rain, but some of this is snow as precipitation. Our recent rains in eastern Colorado, western Nebraska showing up here. And again, it's that eastern New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas region extending up into parts of Nebraska that have been well below normal here in terms of rainfall over the last 90 days. So that's where we stand as of right now. And again, just to focus, this is the area here that I specifically want to keep a very close eye on as we move forward. Let's look at what's going on with the El Nino. We know we are out of a La Nina, right? We are in neutral conditions. Models suggest that this onset of the El Nino is going to continue steadily. But you'll notice here that there is a very clear bifurcation in the model data in regards to how quickly this will develop. You have a clear cluster of models developing this rapidly into a moderate El Nino by this summer, and you have another cluster with admittedly less members keeping this a weaker El Nino as we move into summer. This inflection point, this bifurcation, this occurs in mid-June. So we are fast approaching the time when the models are going to start to get a handle on how this behaves. And this is going to have a huge impact on the sensible weather that we experience in the Ag Belt. It's not entirely clear yet exactly how this will impact us, but a strong, moderate, or strong El Nino compared to a weak one is a very, very different set of circumstances that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on. But if you take a blend of all these, good agreement that we're going to see at least declaration of an El Nino here as we move into June across the belt, and it's going to be a climate feature for us moving into summer. Looking at the latest sea surface temperatures, there's a couple things that I want to point out here. First of all, we obviously have the El Nino developing. That's very clear. You see your very warm waters off the coast of South America extending out into the equatorial Pacific. But we also have had a negative PDO pattern here for a long time. And what that usually entails is ridging north of Hawaii. So you have these warmer waters north of Hawaii and cold waters off the west coast. And recently, we've started to see those cold waters warm because there's been ridging here. There's been warm weather, sunshine. And so that negative PDO signal has started to fade a little bit. There was a lot of concern about that. And one of the things that we preached was let's hesitate a little bit here because it's still early enough for changes. And we're starting to see some of those changes. So while we still have a ridging signal north of Hawaii, the pattern is a little bit more mixed here. When you have a big negative PDO, the issue is you get a big ridge here, so the flow goes like this, a big trough here, the flow goes like this, and then you can get to a ridge over the central U.S. That's the problem with that. When you have a more mixed signal like this off the west coast, you can get this ridge north of Hawaii, but you can still get a more active flow across the plains instead of a large ridge there, and that's a huge difference, and this is very encouraging to me to see this more mixed temperature profile here off the west coast. So not entirely extremely concerned yet in terms of a big ridge over the central U.S. this summer, but we will have to keep an eye on it, especially as we move into the mid to late June and July timeframe. We're looking here at the Hofmöller showing us the winds, the equatorial Pacific. Not going to get too much into the technicalities here, but these reds in the equatorial Pacific show you that the El Nino is continuing with this wind burst supporting the further development of the El Nino as we move into late May and then the early part of June. It's not a huge wind burst, but it is steady and it moves closer to the date line here by the time we get to the 26th, 27th of May or so. You can see it sliding a little bit this way here, and that's going to help support the continuation of the development of the La Nina. So that's what we know so far, right? Let's look back. Here was our spring forecast, our growing season forecast. And one of the things we focused on was this active signal across the plains, the Midwest, and even parts of Colorado into Nebraska. And while it hasn't verified exactly for every region, if you look at this in broad strokes, it has done really well. These analog years that we use for our growing season showed us a drier southeast and a drier Four Corners region down here, at least in parts of the southwestern plains, and a wetter ag belt. And look at what we've seen here. Here's the wetter signal across the ag belt, specifically Colorado into Nebraska, the Dakotas, parts of Minnesota. That's exactly where the analog years showed us that would be. And the drier east and southeast is also what we verified here. So the transition years are doing us some good. In the analog years, while we have a small sample size, they are not totally out to lunch. They are doing a good job of showing us what is coming with this pattern. And here's what they show us for the summer, for June to August. Look at this precip signal, folks. I mean, this is an active pattern across the ag belt. And while I urge you not to take this verbatim, this gives us a good idea as to the fact that the models are signifying a ridge down here in the southern plains and a very active flow over the top of that ridge into the central United States, which supports warm weather and active weather in a large majority of the agriculture belt. This is a classic storm signal, a stormy summer signal across the agriculture belt from June into August. Looking at the model forecast, we see agreement on that. Here's the latest European seasonal run. This is a stormy look across the ag belt. This is a warm and active pattern. It's not overly wet, so it's detrimental, but it's good enough that we have warmth and we have the moisture associated with it. And so we are gaining confidence now, our forecast process gaining confidence in this fact that this will be what it looks like. And that leads us to our forecast from June to August. Obviously, we are going to build this ridge in. We think it's going to be warmer than normal across a vast majority of the belt. It might be much warmer than normal in the southern plains, but we weren't comfortable including that in our forecast yet. So we may have to update that at a later date. We didn't include that yet. But the belt will be encompassed by warmer than normal temperatures, at least slightly warmer than normal. Cooler than normal in the northwest and the northern plains, as well as in the northeast states. But we are also expecting it to be wetter than normal. Here's your storm track, right? Your storm's coming over this ridge and dropping in to the agriculture regions, and it's likely to be wetter than normal across a vast majority. Some of the uncertain areas include parts of Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma down into western Texas. I think this region is going to be, we mentioned it at the top of this program, this is the area to watch. That Central Plains region, I think, is going to be a real close call this year. I don't think we're totally out of the woods there yet. Just to go all the way back, I want to show you guys, just to revisit this, I don't think we're totally out of the woods here in the Central Plains from dryness concerns. And the reason I want to focus on that again is because it's been dry, right? And here's our forecast, but it won't take much of this ridge building north to take this risk and shift it north. You're on a razor's edge here in the Central Plains. I'm much more comfortable with the northern plains, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and the Midwest. I'm not as comfortable here in this white region, where I think even a slight adjustment could make a difference. But broad strokes, warmer than normal across a large part of the belt and wetter than normal as well, looking fairly good here heading into the summer. Our concern areas, again, this is our focus, right? This is the uncertainty region here where I think it's been dry and we need to keep a close eye on the dryness as we move into the summer months moving forward. So overall, things look pretty good. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to everybody for following along with our forecast here. Take a look at that PDF. Feel free to share it however you see fit. If you guys want to share it around, any marketing is good marketing for us. We are totally organic with that. We don't really market ourselves or pay for ads or anything like that. It's not our deal. So if you guys feel like sharing this or spreading the good word, feel free to do so. I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. If you have specific questions about your location, I know sometimes it can be frustrating because in these videos, we don't always go into detail on, northwestern Nebraska or southwestern Iowa or eastern North Dakota. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We will go into detail for you on an individual basis, and we're here to help and make things easier for you. So shoot us an email or a phone call, whatever. We're happy to help and chat with you guys. We will update this forecast over the next couple of weeks as we move forward. If you guys have any concerns, give us a shout. We're happy to help. And thank you so much for watching. Here's to a good summer. We'll talk to you guys real soon. Have a great evening.